Good evening, everyone. Brad, thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for December 6th, 2018. Before we get started, I wanted to thank our Erica, our chair of warrant, who decided at the very last minute that we should all go and listen to the Chickering Philharmonic instead of having the warrant committee meeting last night. So for all of you at home that missed the tree lighting ceremony, it was spectacular. The Chickering Philharmonic was amazing. David Bowie and Bing Crosby's rendition of The Little Drummer Boy has nothing on the fifth graders, so they were amazing. It was cold, but fun. A lot of fun. It was a beautiful thing. And then Friday of last week, also just want to say that the Dover Sherburne boosters had a great event at their Christmas social, which was very, very well attended. So thank you all, and to thank Mark Galoni who put that all together from Dover's Park and Rec last night. They did just a terrific job for all the attendance. So thank you all for doing that, and again, welcome to everyone. First item on our agenda this evening, rail trail update. And
I can give you an update.
Yeah.
So Steve Anderson was supposed to attend this meeting, but we asked him not to attend tonight. And what we're going to do is I'm going to give an update on my meeting with Val and Kevin on Sunday. So I met with Val and Kevin on Sunday, and the primary object of that meeting was they wanted to talk a little bit about the revised cost estimates for the design and building of the rail trail. So one of the things we did discuss at that meeting was that everybody needs to keep in mind that that is an estimate. And to get hard numbers, we really need to complete phase one. And because phase one will give us a design, and once we get a design, we can then go out to bid on each of the line items. And as a municipality, we have to go out to bid, and we have to accept the lowest bid. But we also all know that as a municipality, we also have approximately a 30% markup because of we need to use vendors that have union employees. So, we all understand that. So so Val and Kevin wanted to know whether or not there was an appetite on the Board of Selectmen to work with Friends of the Dover Greenway in any ways that we could to help reduce the costs within the framework of what was decided at town meeting. And I had said that I could not talk for the board, but I would float this idea to the rest of the board and get a sense of whether or not the other members of the board would be willing to work with Friends of the Dover Greenway to do that. Specifically, some of the things we talked about was Medfield at their town meeting did approve the rail trail, and they have in their minutes, they are looking to get a $100,000 grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And, I was of the opinion that I think the board would support the Board of Selectmen's office assisting the Friends of the Dover Greenway in applying for this grant and potentially other grants that are out there to help offset or reduce the cost. But I think it's really important for all of us to understand that without moving forward with phase one, we really don't get to the point where we can go out to bid with the design and get a much better feel for what the true cost of building the rail trail will be. And also, I had a conversation with Steve Anderson yesterday to go back through the MOU and to make sure that nowhere have we inadvertently put language in that potentially forces the members of the Dover Greenway that if they sign the MOU, that they're on the hook to collect the $1.7 million in pledges, because we did make sure that we have contingencies within the lease, that financial contingencies, that if the money can't be raised, we can walk away from that. And if the MBTA won't agree to that, then we're going to work with the license agreement. So I guess I will open it up to, and before I do that, did I misunderstand the gist of the meeting with Val and Kevin?
No, I think, so I think you're right. So just to step back a little bit from our point of view, as you know, the town has voted 3 times to give you a mandate to.
Right, and which is why we want to move this forward.
And we have undertaken to fund it.
Right.
And so it's a challenge because we essentially would write the check, but the town decides on the estimates.
Right.
And for us, what has happened over the last 3 years is we've gone from an $800,000 project to 1.2 million, to 1.6 million, to 1.7 million. And so for us, we're kind of saying, well, hang on, this trail is actually shorter than that time frame, but the budget is doubled.
Right.
And so that makes us nervous, and to go to donors and say, actually, every time we come to you, we're going to ask for more because the estimate keeps getting bigger. Now, I understand that these are estimates, but I also understand that there's discretion for the selectmen to decide how much of a Taj Mahal rail trail this needs to be. And other towns have discretionally decided, some of the things in here are maybe preferable but not a requirement of the project. For example, no other town has put in the contingency for putting in a rail line, which is in here.
Right, but we also went to the MBTA and asked them to take that out. And again, we're in a bit of a pickle, and I have talked to Kevin and Val, who were at the meeting with Beals and Thomas. So we have a mandate to build the rail trail, but we also have a mandate not to spend the town's money. So just like you're in a bind, we're in a bind, and I understand that it's difficult to ask for money that we may not even ever spend. So we have asked the MBTA to remove that language from the lease, and we're still waiting. That's one of the last things. And also I said, why don't we see if there are some kinds of financial instruments that can be purchased, that in the event those costs come up, you buy a surety bond or something, so that you're not giving the town the money, and you're not, some insurance company is going to take the risk as to whether or not. And those were things that I suggested we think about and talk about and get creative on, because I fully understand how you may, if I were making a donation and I didn't know necessarily that my funds were going to be used specifically for the rail trail, I would be uncomfortable. So there are financial instruments that we can purchase that will, or put in place, that will allow the FDG to maintain control of the funds, and only if they're needed to release them to the town. And by the same token, like a letter of credit, we would all agree ahead of time that if the demand is made by the MBTA, the town makes the demand to the bank, and the bank releases the funds. So I think there are a lot of ways we can slice the cat so that we can all get out of this what we need, or slice the pie. Slice the cat is an example, but slice the pie. But we need to put our heads together. So I, as one voting member of this board, am committed to using every resource that I know to try and do that. And I wanted to make sure that John and Bob felt the same way and wanted to make the same commitment.
So we welcome those suggestions as to how we can make this more feasible.
But unfortunately, the bottom line is we need to get that design, and once you get the design, you know, we have to go out to bid.
Sure.
So, and at that point, and even before the design is final, once we understand the elements of it, we can have some more meaningful conversations as well.
Well, I'm very happy that Robin is our designee on this particular effort. You know, I'm relatively new to this particular issue, and
How can you say that, Bob? You've lived it.
it wasn't one of those issues that literally hit my radar screen a few years back, and so it was, you know, it was sort of over here for me. The voters voted more than once to support a rail trail, and you know, it's our obligation, the board's obligation, to do what we can within the proper frameworks and the proper way to get that done for the voters. And that was my position 7 months ago. That's my position today. It'll be my position 7 months from now. And I think you guys have been terrific. I think there's been a lot of collaborative work. It seems like we're inching to the top of the hill with this massive boulder. And I really hope we can get it over the top. But I certainly support creative ways of resolving the issues, as long as they meet the dual obligations that we committed to at town meeting a few years back.
So you both know of all the people on the board where I stand and our commitment to it, the hours and hours of work that we've done, you know, behind the scenes on the behalf of the rail trail. We've also, I have to also say that we have been open, completely transparent with all of the people who have voiced their opinion who are on the opposite side of it. We've told them that we will stay, you know, true to everything that was voted. And I think everything that we've discussed and all the items that we've talked about are certainly reasonable and certainly things that you'd expect a town to do as we're committed to doing this. So that we all know where we stand. We know that the reason the trail got shorter is because we were the only town that ever went to the MBTA and said, segment the lease. So, and then as we have shared with you over the past 2 years, that just getting that part of it where we are today was a huge step. So we've worked tirelessly, and our town council has worked extremely hard.
And the Friends and their town and their council and their connections in the various, I mean, this has been a
That's how the rock got up the hill.
I agree, because, you know, as citizen volunteers, we put hundreds of hours into this.
Yeah.
So we're also watching the boulder go up the hill. But we have to be cognizant at some point, if the boulder continues to get bigger and bigger, we won't be able to push it.
Well, it's going to come down the hill.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the selectmen would consider there are probably ways, right now this is being negotiated and delivered or designed and delivered as a entirely risk-free option for the town. And there are ways to consider, does it have to be a zero-risk proposition? Because other towns take it as there are minor risks involved, but we accept them and move forward. For Dover, it's been zero risk, and I think that's part of it. This budget's gotten so big. And so that needs to be thought about in terms of, you know, most of the towns that have done this have accepted some risks in the lease as rare consequences. But Dover has zero risk, and as a consequence, the Boulder's gotten very, very large.
You know, there still are risks in the, because at the end of the day, there is a no-risk option for this, and it's just the same way that every day I cross the street, there's the risk that I'm going to get hit by a car. So there's certain risks that we're all willing to live with. And, you know, the issue that we have is the immense pressure we had to appease both sides of this equation. And at the end of the day, we made a commitment to the town on certain things. So, we could, and that's why I say I think there are less expensive options to mitigate some of the risks that are being fully funded in that cost estimate. And so those are things that we should get creative about. You have some very, very seasoned financial professionals on your board, and I've done a little bit of financial engineering myself. But at the end of the day, I'm sure we can find solutions to a lot of these issues that are more cost effective, substantially more cost effective. And so long as John and Bob are comfortable with it, I am more than happy to work with you. And, John, you're a financial engineer. Maybe some instruments that are out there.
Yeah, and all these things are very reasonable. All of these things are items that certainly a community is going to look at. The community is going to put its community hat on as you look at these things, where it's not our intent to have somebody bear an unreasonable burden. And it's certainly not our intent to get to a point where we just walk away and we turn our backs and say, you're stuck. That's absolutely, I think we've shown that. We've certainly demonstrated that with what we've done over and above and behind the scenes to get to where we are today. It took a lot of hard work, as you know. We've discussed this at length. And just one caveat to that is our town council deserves also a lot of credit for finding solutions to the insurance. The insurance numbers that had come in were significantly larger than they are today. So we've, it's got to be collaborative. We've got to reach a consensus on a lot of these things. We know it. I think that's always been our attitude, and it's been our operating mantra since this board became the configuration of this board, where we're not going to agree on everything, and yet when we decide this is the way we're going to move forward, we move forward together. So, and I think we've demonstrated that to you and to everybody in just about everything we've done.
And the silliest thing would be not to go after the grants that are available to help fund this. So, we should certainly put in an application for that $100,000 grant. And, I can see if because the Medfield Town Planner is the one that's filling out that application. So we can talk to our town planner and see if he can assist us with that as well. Because I believe that needs to be in before February. So.
I think we would like also to, as part of that, to revisit this, to see where this can be creatively addressed.
Right.
Because even if the grant goes in, but we're still looking at 1.7 million rail trail, even with that, it doesn't change the upfront cost.
Right, again, that's an estimate.
Sure.
And right, I mean, we can certainly go through some of those back-ended line items, and I thought the way we had left it at the meeting we had with Beals and Thomas was to focus first on just the cost to build it, and then look, because Steve, whose last name I can't pronounce, the head of the Beals and Thomas program manager? Robert. Right. So he has a lot of experience with Holliston, and he said in the 5 or 6 years that the Holliston Rail Trail has been in existence, and they certainly get a lot of traffic through it, the annual maintenance is negligible because the stone dust just does not erode, and the Holliston Highway Department rides it once a year, or walkers report back to them to let them know if there's erosion, and all you do is patch it up. So, and so we can talk to Craig Hughes about that as well. And see. So, certainly we are open to all of those items.
Valerie, is there anything you'd like to add? Alan and Mark just brought us up to date.
Yeah, sorry that I was late. Yeah, I mean, we certainly want to have a collaborative effort and definitely going after the grants. I think we're just trying to get, so when we set out on this, and maybe you guys have already said this, so I apologize if I'm repeating anything. We looked at the 1 million, and it was a stretch goal for us, but we thought we could do it. We felt like we had a good plan in place. But as we've gone along and the costs have exceeded far beyond that, now we're really concerned about being able to reach a 1.6, 1.7 cost estimate. That's quite a significant jump from what we had started out at. So that's kind of where we're kind of raising some caution flags about that we need some help on getting the budget back into a range that we feel confident again that we can meet. Because we don't want to take this on and waste anyone's time and efforts if we don't feel like we're going to be successful at it.
Right.
So I think we're all in agreement on that. So, yeah.
You know, and the other thing I forgot that we talked about is maybe potentially putting a placeholder on the warrant, just in the event that as this journey continued, we felt that we needed to go back to town meeting for certain aspects of it.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Does the phase one design report give us a differing cost estimate, or how do we get a revised cost estimate?
Well, it gives you the detailed specs so that you can go to contractors and actually get bids to construct.
But are bids likely to be a quarter of this estimate? I mean, Needham's rail was done for about 1/4 of this estimate.
I mean, why wouldn't they? You know, it should cost what it costs. And again, you know, you have to go out to bid. It depends on the market. It depends on the cost of materials. You know, I'm sure these are the best estimates that they have at the time. There are also significant contingencies in there as well. And, you know, the numbers that can potentially be scrubbed are the back end perpetual maintenance, given what the experience have been of the rail trails. And again, hopefully we can find a very cost-effective solution to the one clause in the lease if the MBTA forces us to say that we would replace it to grade, where we could buy a financial instrument that would fund that if it had to be funded.
I also think that you haven't had the luxury of being able to work with the town to go out and to go back after bids have come in. We haven't gotten to that point yet. So we're gonna have more capacity to have a better conversation after the fact, to be able to come back to say, well, this is what you're supposed to do. This is the scope of the work. These are the things that have to be done. What's the best solution to that phase of the project?
Do we have flexibility to put the design phase out to bid? I know at one time we talked about Beals and Thomas.
Well, we made a decision a few months ago that in order to move this along as quickly as we could, and this was a joint decision, that we would stick with Beals and Thomas, because going back out to bid for the design phase was going to delay the process, so.
Well, my recollection was that was because we were told the lease was going to be signed in August. And that
Well-
never happened.
Well, no, no, that is not a correct
It was a
statement.
deadline, though, wasn't
No,
it?
so, and there still is a deadline. So we run the risk that even though we've negotiated a lease, if there is a new regime at the MBTA, that they may decide that they don't want to give us the lease that we have currently almost negotiated. So in August, we were trying to speed this up as best as we could. But then the MBTA came back to us and said, well, there are additional individuals at the MBTA whose comments were not addressed. So we need to go back to all of those individuals and address those comments. So that delayed things. So what we're trying to do now is say to them, listen, can we sign this lease, but have a financing contingency? So then that way, we know that we have a lease that has been signed, but we also know that there's an opt-out if we can't raise the funds, because the town can't commit to entering the lease and paying for the rail trail, because that's not what town meeting authorized us to do. And at this juncture, we don't even have costs that are firm enough for you to go out and raise money. So we're kind of in this catch-22 situation. So that would be the best outcome. But they haven't gotten back to us as to whether or not that is something that they would be willing to do.
And about how long has that been since we've been
And
waiting?
it's just really, it's frustrating because we do go back to them, right?
Months or two, right?
Right, a month or two,
September.
and
At the end of
then,
September.
right. And, the issue was that the attorney, but the good news is, the attorney at the MBTA is really eager to get this done. So we do have momentum, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The only thing I could add is that it is a unique group we're dealing with. The authority is very different in terms of their management, their capacity, how they work with their outside counsel. And of course, the other thing I would just add is it was our outside counsel that was able to get, from an insurance standpoint, what we thought would be a $65,000 bill that you would have to pay upfront with no way to get back, to a significantly less amount of money, where in the event it doesn't go forward, you would get unused premiums back. So I think that to me is the significance of, and again, the thing I would point to say, this is going to be a collaborative effort. I'm sure you have an idea of some of the time and energy and effort that we have put into this behind the scenes and with the MBTA and their counsel, outside counsel, just to keep moving this forward. It has been as Bob said, a 2-year pushing water up a hill. So we have been committed to this, as you know, from my standpoint, and Robin's, because we're the ones that have been doing this from the beginning, and Bob has been just part of the process for 8 months, but I'm sure it's felt like 8 years.
Yeah, it has. It actually has seemed like it's been a very long time.
But we are going to find a solution. Then, as Robin said, we've got to stay within the navigational beacons of what we're charged with, but we will find a solution.
And now maybe if we can coordinate with Medfield, and, maybe that way there could be reduced costs if you're doing a much longer stretch with a little sliver not being done in between. But
Lunch break.
we'll just walk around that, right?
You know, try some.
Valerie, anything else?
We good?
Good.
Okay.
Well, thank you for all your hard work. I know this has been
I know it's frustrating, but
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get a holiday party package. You just don't know.
Invite him.
Not a party, but a package, a gift.
Okay.
MBTA will come through.
but I'll contact Gino tomorrow about that grant.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda this evening is a continuation of the November 29th tax classification hearing, which is riveting stuff.
Happy holidays.
See you tomorrow.
Mr. Chairman, as you said, we had the classification hearing with the assessors at our last meeting. Because the new growth had not yet been officially certified, the advice of the town assessor was to continue the hearing to tonight. The new growth has been certified. All the board has to do now is simply reaffirm the votes it took at its last meeting with respect to the residential factor, open space, and the residential commercial exemptions in accordance with the handout in your packet.
Factor of 1, correct, sir?
Factor of 1?
factor of one. So I would accept a motion to first read and approve the suspended classification
Yes.
from November 29th.
Yes.
From the meeting of November 29th with a factor of one.
Yes.
Mona, how'd I do on that?
Excellent.
Second.
Done? So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, sir. Welcome. And that's just one part.
Well, actually, you do have to do the other three parts. The discount, voting no on the grant to the discount for open space, no on the residential exemption, and no on the small commercial exemption, as you did at your last meeting.
To select residential factor of one was approved on the first one. In computing your residential factor, no discount rate for open space, item number 2, and item number 3, residential exemption adopted, no on item number 3.
And number 4,
And number 4 was small commercial exemption, also adopted, no on number 4. So I would accept a motion to approve no on item number 2, no on item number 3, residential exemption, and no small commercial exemption adoption.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Adopted. So that's both measures, and that's separate. Thank you very much. The next item is to review Selectmen's fiscal 2020 operating budget, item number 541, specifically the Council on Aging requests. Camille, Joanne, thank you very much. It's great to see you both. And specifically, the items, Dave, do we have to read the items that are in addition or just adopting the budget as proposed?
you can adopt the budget as proposed. I would simply highlight for you the fact they are requesting, and I am recommending, an additional 45 hours for the director's wages for next year, and 4 hours a week for the volunteer coordinator in the budget for next year, which I'm also recommending. And then the additional expenses for the newsletter, the upgraded newsletter, are in the budget for fiscal 20, which I also support as well.
And for those of you watching at home, the director is Janet Claypool, the associate council on aging volunteer is Anne Marie Thompson, both who are wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Would either of you like to speak to any of those two, just with regards to?
Support what you're saying. I mean, that's, I mean, Anne Marie is incredible. She's really a dynamite addition. And we'd like to more.
She is wonderful, and Janet is just a tremendous asset of the town and your staff. So I'd accept a motion to
So
approve.
I think what we should say, because those watching may think, well, how much is 45 additional hours increase the budget?
It's because she calculated it out.
I know she
Right.
did.
Right, so, the additional 48 hours is $1,757. And it's so that the coordinator can get paid to attend many of the evening meetings. And, as Mr. Ramsey said, it was something he recommended. And then the additional part-time staff coordinator, that's $3,600, which was not in the budget, and that also is something that's being recommended. So it's not a huge increase in the salary line.
Anything else?
That's it.
So I would accept a motion, as we've discussed, to approve the budget as proposed.
So do you have to say five, line item 154?
Item number 0541.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you both. Well, thank you both. And Erica, thank you. Last night was wonderful. Yeah. The kids were part of the celebration and the band, so it was really neat. The next item is to review the selectmen's updates for our rail trail. Seems like
No,
we've.
it's to
the,
authorize the
Oh, I'm
Adams
sorry.
gift.
The vote to authorize the expenditure of Arthur Adams Gift Fund and the vote to authorize the expenditure from the Conservation Land Acquisition Fund. Mr. Ramsey, would you like to give us some?
Mr. Chairman, the Land Trust has been working for some period of time to acquire the Blake property on Strawberry Hill. And they have requested as part of this effort that the Conservation Commission ante up $50,000 in combined funds. The Conservation Commission therefore is recommending to do that and is asking for approval from the Selectmen to tap these two sources.
Mr. Springer, do you have any questions?
Nope.
Anything you'd like to add? Mrs. Hunter?
I think just to add a little bit of color, it's a 36-acre property on the corner of Dedham Street and Strawberry Hill. And the Dover Land Trust is acquiring the property for $2.3 million. Neighbors, 80% of the pledges are coming from neighbors in that area. And they are requesting, again, that the town commit $50,000, which is, we do set up those grants. We do make that appropriation to be used for parcels of land that have a benefit to the town. This land does also abut some other Dover Land Trust properties, as well as there's access to Noanet. So I really commend the Land Trust for working on this and pulling it together, and seemingly they may be able to preserve this as open space for the town of Dover.
Well, anything to
So should we I would like to entertain a motion to appropriate is that the correct term? To authorize the expenditure of $50,000 from the Conservation Trust Fund to help support the acquisition of the Blake Strawberry Hill property.
So moved.
set that motion? Seconded?
I made the motion.
You
You
made the
seconded
motion.
it? Right.
You have to say it.
I seconded and ask, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It was a
Thank you.
song. It was a song, second.
Sorry,
Yes.
I'm confused. What did you say was adjacent to what other property?
It's just on the corner, well,
On the corner as you
Right.
go up Strawberry.
Yeah.
I
on
thought
the right-hand side.
you implied that it was adjacent.
well, that's what it's roughly 36 acres, and they said that there was some access to Noanet, Woodlands, Hale, and some other properties that
Okay.
are owned by
I
Concom.
just didn't hear the property.
Yeah. But if you'd like to take a look at this, you're more than welcome to. There's a map of it.
As we're having this brief discussion, I think it's important to thank the neighbors in that area who've done just a tremendous job. Donna Law, Sarah Milano, who've been spearheading the effort on behalf of the neighbors in the area to coordinate this process. Have done a tremendous job. But as all the neighbors I know, there are probably 15 or 20 families who've contributed so far. So thank you all very much. Camille, did you have a question on any of that? Would you like to?
No, pretty much do it.
Terrific. Well, thank you. Updates? We've gone through the rail trail. We have
Town
the
management.
Caryl community.
You want me to go, Caryl?
Sure.
We had our first formal meeting of the Caryl Community Center Project Committee last night. 15 people plus attendees.
Were there many people attending the meeting?
There were about 3 or 4 people attending the meeting. I would say it was a raucous affair, since you had all these people getting together and meeting, some for the first time. And it went well. We basically people introduced themselves. We went on to talk about the work that had been going on for the past month, looking at costs from past data, looking at the work that's been done for doing a space assessment needs analysis. And I think most of the time was spent with one of the members presenting a communications framework. So we all see this project really boiling down ultimately to how well we communicate with the community and hear from the community to help us steer and course correct as we go through time. I think the analytical research will be relatively straightforward. So we had the framework, we presented it last night, we had a lot of discussion about it. The young woman who put the framework together was taking copious notes, and I'm sure we'll see some revisions as we go forward in time. I thought it was a really good kickoff meeting.
Great. Congratulations.
It's the other guys.
It's been a long journey to get to this point, and it's going to be a lot.
We got another
of work.
rock that we're trying, you know.
It's going to be a lot of work going forward. So congratulations. And I know there are groups from perfect timing, from students all the way through.
I would like to, if I may, push forward something that we've talked about, is that the newsletter, which the town is supporting for us, thank you very much, certainly can be used as a vehicle. One of the things that we had anticipated in making it, upgrading it, so to speak, and we send it out every other month now, but we can certainly accept inserts into it, and we'd be delighted to do that at your organization's cost and so forth, so long as it's delivered to us. But I think that would be probably a wonderful way to,
I
disseminate.
mentioned that to Erin last night after the meeting.
Yeah. So, that certainly is something we support.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Like we said last night, I mean, you said to Camille last night, it's going to take everybody.
Yeah. But so, we're not sorry, excuse me, Rob.
And I think it's so important, communication is so important, and everybody gets their information through different vehicles.
Yes.
So we need to be cognizant of sending out the same information in a lot of different ways. Just to make sure that the information is out there and people citizens are accessing it.
And just to be very clear, though, we put this forward and welcome it, so long as it's no additional work to Janet, number one, which is fine, because she is incredibly overworked now, and so we made a commitment that we will not, put anything more on her table having to do this, and that the cost doesn't come back to us, but so long as it's delivered to us and, it looks similar, if you will, to what we're producing, that's wonderful.
The only cost we will have would be on postage. That would be
If one page.
It would just be
It's
one
going to
page,
be very
up for an
right.
update.
Yeah. So
That's the only thing that we were thinking about, that it might cost us a little. I think we can manage, I hope.
That's great.
Well, I'm sure I know we can.
Yeah, and
We have to.
Yes, we have to.
Right.
With regards to the update on the town administrator search, there's two things to report. One, we met, as most of you know, as a group, as a board, on Saturday last week to interview candidates for our interim town administrator. We had two fantastic candidates that we interviewed. The board was extremely pleased with both candidates. We feel that both candidates had tremendous amount of experience, had done significant work for towns comparable to their work their entire career. We feel we absolutely cannot go wrong either. Thank them both. We're in the process of moving that to the next step. We'll have hopefully something to report to you after our next meeting, which is Saturday, on this particular item. That's the first part. The second part is Mr. Ramsey on the 28th, reminding everyone that the 28th of December is Mr. Ramsey's, the beginning of your retirement. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
It can
And
be
he's
great.
checking off boxes. I think next Tuesday will be your final order select. No, a week.
A week.
Week.
The 18th.
I'm a week ahead of myself.
The 18th. The 18th. So we're adorned in our holiday ties for the 18th.
There's a competition going on here.
I'm gonna win.
But we're really going to turn it up a notch for the 18th.
Now, I bet Mr. Ramsey has socks to match.
I'm not saying.
Brad can get a close-up of the socks. We will refrain. So, at the beginning of Mr. Ramsey's retirement, we'll have an interim to step in. The interim, we are absolutely assured, we can absolutely assure the town of Dover that the interim who will step in is a very well qualified administrator.
What is the meeting for on Saturday at 9? Is that?
We're in the process of working,
9:30, yeah.
9:30, sorry.
I'm sorry, I missed the part.
What time is the meeting?
Oh, 9:30. It's posted for 9:30.
Okay.
Right.
What was it, have you decided, or is there an interview? What is happening?
We had the interview process last week. We're in the process of discussing the candidacies with the candidates right now. We have backgrounds, we have checks, we have interviews.
We have the lawyers look at this.
We have outside counsel also going through a formal process of an offer. It has to be an offer, an acceptance, a negotiation
And
point.
foremost, the
And-
board, everything needs to be done in public, and the board will be making a decision on Saturday.
On Saturday?
Yeah.
That's what we had on the news.
It's scheduled. We scheduled it specifically for that, Camille, for 2 Saturdays in a row. So we wouldn't interfere primarily with anybody during the day. It would be a we tried to make that process as seamless as possible for everybody around us, specifically to the town convention during the day. And of course, you're dealing with people with their jobs, their schedule, and the Saturday. We have all been a part of search committees for the superintendent, and the search committees have always interviewed people on Saturdays. I found that in the search that I was involved with, Bob in the search that he was involved with, Bob in the search that she was involved with at the district level, for the superintendents worked extremely well having it on Saturday. So that's why. So that part. And as I said, we are very, very happy with what we have so far. And I think we're going to be extremely happy with the outcome of the process. So, would you like to add anything?
No, good, we're good.
Okay, great. So, thank you, and updates. The only other item that for updates would be the free cash conversation. The free cash conversation will go to the next step now that we have the certified free cash, the certified position. So we will have our next conversation as everybody reports back to me and lets me know their availability for the next couple of weeks. To approve the November 6th open session.
Before we do this, we have one
Oh, we have one,
nomination.
correct. We have one nomination. And so, Mr. Make.
It's up to you, I'll stay out of this one.
I would be happy.
Oh, okay, I got the pronunciation.
Wait a minute. Now that you got the pronunciation, you want to do it.
You can do it, John. We should be cognizant of the time, so.
Why don't you go through the, I will pronounce Mr. Mike Jane, and
Ink Jane.
Mike
Jane.
Jane. I didn't think there was going to be that much controversy, but to the position of, to nominate for the position of the recycling committee.
So it's an open position which will expire on 6/30/2019. So it's currently an open position, so he's filling a position that's open, and his term will expire on 6/30/2019. And the recycling committee would like us to thank him for stepping into this open position.
And I would accept the nomination of Mr. Mike Jane to the open position.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you for indulging us in pronunciation. Now we can approve the minutes of November 6, 2018 open session.
It's November 8th.
November 8th.
And November 6th. Oh, yes.
It says they, yeah. So I have no comments.
Any comments?
No, I think we're good.
No. Very well done. Thank you very much. We accept the motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
And seconded, all in favor? Aye. Apologize for that.
You know, sometimes those places that you're not
Doesn't that say 6?
Yeah, but it does say so.
It does say 6.
But it says, but I think it must be,
You must have an overlap.
you must. What?
This is,
Brad,
November 8th.
you got 8. You got 8. Everybody has 8, but I have the 6. I do feel like a Grinch.
We will confirm.
it does say
It does say the 6.
I think it says 8 actually.
And we apologize for
We apologize. Him to the people at home. I thought that it would be a great idea for our next meeting to have our newest member regale us in Christmas carols. Don't you think that would be a great idea?
Holiday carol?
Holiday, I apologize, holiday carols.
I think it's terrific.
Could you find one?
I've aged a lot.
No, if there are no other items and no other announcements, we have no special permits this evening.
Special licenses.
Special licenses. Nothing.
Have all been used up.
Yes.
Or maybe they're saving them for next time.
Nothing else. Brad, thank you for a tremendous meeting. Greatly appreciated. Accept a motion to adjourn to executive session.
Not to return.
Not to return.
And the purpose is to discuss litigation.
And the purpose is to discuss litigation.
So moved.
Seconded? All in favor? Aye.